Hello, everyone, and good evening. I'm here, Justin Yard, one half of the Black Health Show. The other half, D.Moss, will be joining us soon. And as always, we're talking about Black health. And 2 weeks ago, we were focused on careers in the Black health, and we taking a shift today into what I would call the basis of Black health and what I have to understand about Black health. I always talk about preventative measures, and this group of people that I have in front of me are the people that create the preventative measures. So you don't have to go to your primary care physician as often. And these individuals are what you would call in the industry of farming. All right. And so that's a huge industry with a lot of different layers. We're going to get into it today. And I would like everybody to go around and introduce themselves and really just talk about who they are and what they do, and how long they've been doing it as well. So I'll start off with Tucson, since you're right in front of in the main screen right now. So if you could just give us the kind of summation of who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing it.
No, thank you for that. Good evening, everybody. My name is Toussaint Paskins. I'm from Springfield, born, raised, established, two generations strong. Gave birth to the third, 2015. So I love my city. Um, in the current moment, I'm an educator. I teach science. But prior to that, you guys may know me for working with gardening in the community, a youth organizer, community organizer, and farmer organizer. So that's myself. I love what I do. I love my people, and I believe farming is the foundation to all independence. So glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
For sure, the pleasure is all ours. Sister Anna, you can go next.
Okay. Well, I'm Sister Anna Muhammad. I've been in Springfield since 2007. It is indeed my adoptive home. I came here by way of Baltimore, by way of Los Angeles, by way of San Diego, my hometown, San Diego, California. I've been a gardener. My husband and I have been gardening here since around 2008. At one point, I was on the board of gardening the community, so I work very closely with my dear brother Toussaint. Currently, I do work with the Northeast Organic Farming Association, the Massachusetts chapter, and my specialty is soil fertility, bio-intensive growing. I work with the Home City Housing Youth Leaders right here in Springfield, literally a couple of blocks from my home. I work with the Open Pantry Garden. That's a new community garden. And I'm a member of Muhammad's Mosque number 13. I'm a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And what drives me in this work, first of all, I'm inspired by the two brothers or the three brothers right here on this program. But most importantly, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has always told us that farming is the engine of our national life. We cannot have wealth unless we have land and the ability to have self-determination over what we eat, what we put in our bodies. So I'm very humbled that Brother Justin would ask me to be on the show with these two giants in the agricultural scene here in Springfield.
Thank you. No, I don't leave me humble now. All right, Mr. Andrew.
Yes, sir. Andrew Lorian, also here from Springfield, and Sister Anna, I gotta give a big shout out to you because since I found my passion for wanting to figure out my mission, the gardening world and urban farming, I'm thankful to be able to spend some time along her with her and some of the things she's doing. And some of the things going on in Springfield are just amazing. Toussaint, man, I always looked up to you. And I just want to find my way. So I'm backyard farming, and I'm trying to figure it out.
For sure, for sure. I know you do more than that, Andrew. I see you everywhere.
Yes.
So I know a lot of people here and viewers don't even understand basically what farming is. What we really see farming as is big farms, right? Huge farms, acres and acres of land, crop rotations. You know what I mean? The big rigs spraying pesticides on. That's what they see as farming, and not understanding where it can go. So I want you guys to kind of explain what farming is and define that for people. so they understand what that is in hindsight.
Want a rock paper scissors shoe?
Well, this
I'll defer to
honestly,
you. I'll defer to you. Go right ahead.
this reminds me a lot of the saying where there's no farms, there's no food.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of rocked with that. I saw it as a bumper sticker, and I was ready to use it. And a friend of mine told me that there's kind of something to think about there, because that's going to say that you can't provide for yourself. And I've grown so much in the size that in the area that you could park a car. I've grown enough food for my family for the summer. Well, not enough food for my family, but I'm telling you, carrots, greens, onions,
Mm-hmm.
herbs, tomatoes. I didn't go to the store for any of those things, and I was able to share some in a small amount of space. So farming is a lot more, like you said. It's not just a big um, guy on a tractor, hogging up and cutting down
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. You can farm in your windowsill, grow enough basil to make some nice dishes. And
Mm-hmm.
you're not sure what to do with it, you could look at some of the things Sister Anna's doing with her food as medicine workshops.
For sure. Anybody else could take it over too as well.
I know for me, it is a level of self determination. Farming definitely is not what we see on the big tractor, spraying glyphosate and all that great stuff all over the place. I mean, that's a type of farming. That's what you call commodity farming. It's interesting that I think I read this um, on a website that the USDA lists farming, commodity farming as your big soybean, corn, but that what they call specialty crops are vegetables, and that's the foods that keep us alive. So farming, and I really like the way that Brother Andrew put it, farming is where you are. It could be the little plants that you have on your windowsill, the container um, food that you're growing on your porch, or if you have a big backyard. I mean, my husband and I, we started with a little plot in our backyard, and now, we're blessed to grow enough where not only can we eat for the season, but now I can preserve that food. So farming has many different aspects, and we all participate in that, whether you're in a community garden, whether you have a very small backyard plot. But farming is very important. It's what sustains us. Our food source doesn't just start in Stop and Shop and Price Right. It has a home, and that home is indeed the soil. And because as a people, we've had such a traumatic history with growing food, farming becomes even more important for us to get through that, and we can use that to even get through a crisis like this pandemic we're in. So farming, oh yeah, farming has a lot of meanings, but everything comes from it. Our sustenance comes from
Wonderfully
Well,
said. Um,
it. So,
when I think about farming, I believe it's a key to an individual to it's a key to liberation. It's the first door when we think about walking through a door. When we think about healing our bodies, our spiritual body, our mental body, our physical body, it's that first step needed to open up, to
mhm,
really kick down that door. Um, Everybody else spoke on, being self-sustainable, and but we'll continue to speak on that. But yeah, that's what I think about. It's a key to liberation of self.
mhm,
yeah, I think it's important, especially in this month that they try to give us as people the Black histories every single year. I think it's pivotal for people to understand that our history here, as they depict it, right, and we're just going to use that for
mhm,
now, is is rooted in farming, in this
mhm,
the ability for America to be what they would call a
mhm,
powerhouse country is rooted in our ability to farm. So
mhm,
any economic progress you see in America today is because we as people knew what we were doing with the hands and the
mhm,
soil. So I know people kind of have a big movement towards the urban farming situation, right? And I want you guys to explain that a little bit because people think that again, it's the big rigs. I need a big rig. I need this. I need that. And Laconia and myself, with the help of Sister Anna, were able to, and Tucson as well. Excuse her. But we're able to sustain ourselves when it came to just some of our herbs. And now she's going indoors with her. But explain what urban farming really is.
Wow.
You guys mind if I start this one?
Oh, please go right ahead.
Urban farming is that what of its title, the action of farming in an urban city and area. I'm a person. I'll be honest. I've taken critique to the concept of urban farming, in the sense of what makes our farming different than royal farming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't even think we even have that term royal farming. But well, that's a different conversation. But to urban farming, I think it's a cultivation of rough, rugged lands.
Mm-hmm.
It's seeing what Andrew's saying, seeing a car space and seeing how much vegetables can I grow in a season to sustain these 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
Urban farming takes that into consideration. It thinks about we are no longer going to practice heavy chemicals on land. We're going to take a scientific alternative to it, to cultivating land over time through crop rotations, through biodynamics, which Sister Anna could definitely speak on. It's taking the actual science of growing, that our ancestors taught us and then that we've learned, and putting it to practice and to play. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any, anybody else? I need people to really understand and also how it looks, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
people are visual learners as well. And so I want people to understand, like you said, using a car space. But where can that car space be? Can we land that right in the kitchen? Can we land that
Mm-hmm.
in the living room? Can we land that right outside of our journey, right in that little the little hat? You know what I mean? What
and
can we
and the
do
little cut.
when it comes
Yeah.
to urban farming?
Really, I think Tucson and Andrew, they both summed it up. It's really where you are. I look at my mom, and she is a consummate gardener. I mean, she's just completely green. She doesn't just have a green thumb, she is green. I'm trying to catch up to her. But she gardens in anything. She grows anything, anywhere in a small space in Baltimore. So it's taking what you have. And particularly those of us who are in the city. I love the way Brother Andrew put it. You look at that where that car sat, and you think, how much can I get in there? And you don't need that much to make that happen. And so when we look at the lots that are in our cities, whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's here in Springfield or Boston or Jersey City, we've got these small spaces. Wouldn't it be nice? We take those spaces. Now going into that piece that Brother Toussaint talked about in terms of self-determination, now we can grow food in there, not just to feed ourselves, but the entire block. Now that's gangster right there. When I went
Right.
to when I went to Baltimore on a garden tour a couple of years ago, literally these folks had right across the street from where Freddie Gray was killed, they had set up shop, took over this lot right across the street from Gilmore Homes, in Baltimore, and literally the city had to negotiate with them because they took it over and had it for a couple of years and had grown so much food to feed the entire block. See, when you're talking about taking over the block, that's what I think about. So urban farming is just working with what you have where you are in the simplistic sense of it. And I appreciate what Brother was saying about adding the science, adding the crop rotation, which is not new to the sun. That was not developed with Elliot Coleman and the crew. We brought that with us. That's what Dr. George Washington Carver worked on at Tuskegee Institute. We now know it as Tuskegee University. This is something that runs in our blood, if you will.
Yeah, man, there's so many moving pieces to it. It's like you take ownership and pride of your spaces you're in, and you work with what you got, and it opens up your mind to all new skill sets and old skill sets that you had you have to figure out, how and where you can plant certain things with there being so many shady spots and
Mm-hmm.
with there being potential contamination in the soil. So, we're scientists, we're thinkers, problem solvers
Mm-hmm.
when we're doing this. And talk about problem solving, think about any problem,
Mm-hmm.
like whether it's hunger, environmental issues, climate change, injustices. What better way to attack that than to grow your own food in the space
Mm-hmm.
you're in?
For sure. I want to
Mm-hmm.
add on to what y'all talking because y'all said some deep stuff, and I came prepared in my youth. I used to just come off the top of my head, but I got notes and all that. So,
I
yo,
love
yo,
it.
homie done grown. Sister Anna, and Andrew, I wrote a note on here, and it said the art of cultivation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I
Mm-hmm.
think as a people of diaspora, a people have been scattered amongst this nation from the land of Africa. We
Mm-hmm.
have that in our DNA. We have the ability to cultivate. When you think about the reasons for this action of slavery and enslavement, they wasn't going, and no, they were
Mm-hmm.
going to China, but they was going into China for the rice. But they was coming into Africa and different parts for our knowledge because our ability to cultivate land.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that, being one who's a farmer, and that we all have touched the soil, but you get to a point with touching that soil where you don't need lessons. The
Mm-hmm.
ancestors speak to you. Your cells, your DNA starts to connect with it
Mm-hmm.
because we're people who come from this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we need those richness in us. We thrive within those spaces. So we have to also think of ourselves genetically as artists of cultivations of soil. And I think, unfortunately, that art has been to our detriment in our
Mm-hmm.
existence in this land and in the Caribbean lands in South America and even in the land of Africa has been
Mm-hmm.
that talent, that DNA has been used to benefit others. And I think when we start to come to a place of understanding, like we're kings and queens of this art of cultivation of land, um, our position, our stance behind it becomes firmer because we possess wealth that exists within us that we pass on. So we think twice about who we pass that wealth on, who
Mm-hmm.
controls that wealth, who controls that knowledge that runs in our very DNA,
Mm-hmm.
because it could be exploited. You know, we could start talking about hybrid foods and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
actions of exploitation, but we'll stay little, before we get too big.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta tell our story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to know that. And one of the things I want you guys to start thinking is like when I first got into, I was around farming with Tucson, but I got to know farming like, oh shoot, this is really an art. But what are some of the things people can grow? Like people want to know like what they can grow in their backyard, in their house, anywhere. Where what can people grow? What are the limitations and what are their capabilities when it comes to farming?
Uh, One of the things I do with the youth leaders, we always have to work at a point of comfortability and what they know. And Justin, I think I did this with your family. I always look at, well, what do you like to eat? Because if you're thinking about in terms of what you like to eat, because we don't like a lot of pain. I know I didn't when I first started gardening. So if you drill it down to its common denominator, what do you like to eat? Not the processed stuff, but say if there's someone in the house that makes a good dish that has certain vegetables in it, wouldn't it be nice if we grew some of that? So oftentimes I start with that common denominator with the youth and some of the families so that they can see the continuum, right? So say someone in the house makes sofrito, and you wouldn't believe, a lot of people will tell me I don't eat vegetables when I start naming their favorite dishes and say, oh yeah, I love that, or what's in it. Then they start naming the vegetables. And then we start talking about, well, hey, rather than you buy Goya, let's see if we can grow some of these things, and I bet you we can make it better than Goya or better than the store bought. So it's starting with that common denominator, and then people get buy-in. They see that they can do it, and then there's a connection. Because if they're growing something, I've seen this with the youth. if they're growing something that they know they could take home to their TT to make their favorite food, they get really excited and they'll stay with it. They'll go through, okay, we got to fight the bugs. We've got to, make sure we're watering on time. See, now they become one with it because they don't just see it as this tomato or this pepper. No, this is the item that I'm going to take home and my grandma's going to make something for me or my mom's going to hook me up. That's what they see. So oftentimes I will start with the common denominator of what are your favorite dishes and foods. And then we do look at, okay, we're in New England. It's cold as all get out right now. It's snow on the ground. We're not doing too much outside. So let's think ahead. Let's think ahead into those warmer months. And then that way, again, we get that buy-in, but also that understanding of what can grow and what can't grow. Because when I first started as a gardener, I thought I could grow everything. Wrong. I was like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't San Diego. I can't do all that here. I got to flip the script. So that's one good way to start. It's just, if you're a new gardener, just think about, hey, this is what I would like to eat, and then build from there.
For sure. So
Um,
go ahead.
I know when I worked at GTC, we used to run an awesome. Me and Sister Anna used to do this together. An awesome workshop, growing greens in 14 days. Our basic greens: spinach, lettuce, kale, arugula. They just need water and very little sunlight in 14 days. So, and that's as simple as getting a small. We use the aluminum baking pan that you get a small loaf, adding some soil, a top layer of seeds, cover the whole top layer with some fresh seeds, put a wet cloth on top, and water it daily, and you'll see growth within the next couple of days instantly. Um, that was some fun stuff we used to do. But greens, I don't know if anybody remembers back in school photosynthesis. The basics of the sun, and greens creating its own sugar and own food. So greens, you can grow that year round.
Mustard, collards.
Yep, babies. They'll be babies. We're not talking big ones.
Right.
Okay.
Let's be honest. We're not growing no full leaf.
No,
But
the little baby
if you
ones.
think right, so baby ones, to have a nice sustainable salad, throwing a smoothie. We like to call those microgreens in the farming world. When your greens are very short, they possess tons of nutrition and power at that short baby stage.
Okay.
And you don't need a lot of space. That is something that really can go on your windowsill. Or
Yes.
go on your porch. They're very, very simple things. You always want to start with the simple stuff. Keep it simple.
Right.
Okay. And so, like, we had these things we called raised beds, right? And I call myself being an architect. You know what I mean? A real handyman myself. No, I'm not at all. Which
Gotta start
Andrew was
somewhere.
there. Which Andrew was there. I was over here. But just one of the things that I learned as well was how you can optimize your space. You know what I mean? Because some people think they might need to have, all right, I don't have soil. You know what I mean? And so, what did, like, Andrew, give us some examples of what they can do if they don't have a backyard. You know what I mean? Some people don't even have a backyard. I live in an apartment. What are they doing to still be able to experience the farming at that level?
Yeah, I mean, Tucson hit it right in the head with the microgreens. That's something you can absolutely do. Along with that is herbs. Herbs take up a very small amount of space, and you could do it in a little bit of soil. And if we're talking about soilless gardening, you can get into the hydroponics, the aquaponics, vertical gardening, and you can lose your mind in some of those techniques. And some of them can be very easy. Some of them get really complicated, depending on how you like to, how good your green thumb is. But yeah, man, a windowsill and like some spring onions you can do in the window. You can start seeds. So if you don't have a lot of space, that's when community gets involved. Somebody else might have space, so you might have the ability to start a few tomato plants and pass them on to Tucson, who will be able to grow them for you. So that cuts his time out with dealing with the baby plants. So there's different ways around it. It doesn't always have to be you have the space and the soil. when it comes to gardening. There's resources to bind on. Like oh man,
Mhm.
I started to realize how effective it could be when you work together.
Mhm.
So that's a big part of this as well. Is this having self purpose and feeling good. Like when you can teach somebody something about gardening, how small it is, like it gives
Mhm.
you a purpose. It feels good doing that. So but on the flip side, having a community and being able to reach out to other people with more knowledge, or however that works, is a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Andrew, you hit that joint on the head,
Yeah.
bro. I
Yeah.
had that. I had an asterisk next to that bad boy, thinking about just like how farming and this
Mhm.
basic act creates a food network.
Mhm.
Um, we could think about it as small as you have us four here. Um, Sister Anna, Justin are growing starts. You're building the beds.
Mhm.
I'm planting them, raising
Mhm.
them. Justin, his family's in charge of harvesting.
Mhm.
Wow.
Because you got to think about these vegetables. There's a, you have you have the selfish act of farming, and then you have the
Mhm.
communal act of farming.
Mhm.
It's basics is communal.
Mhm.
Over time, people have economically looked to benefit from this act and made it selfish.
Mhm.
Saying so, if they know a plant yields 45, they're trying to push 50.
Mhm.
You know, when we're like, hey, a plant we know it can yield 45 pepper plants. So, how many plants do we need to grow to make sure we sustain our families for this amount of time? Should become the question, and how we're
Mhm.
doing it. On a bigger level, we could think about if, say, Springfield is in charge of growing the callaloo, peppers, and watermelon. Hartford's in charge of growing
Mhm.
um, all the peppers. Philly's in charge of another crop. We now start to develop a transportation system
Mhm.
where we're networking and we're creating venues and economics amongst crossing lines.
Mhm.
Start to think about land ownership, workers. We don't become scared of having babies anymore because we now have self reliant jobs that are sustainable every year,
Mhm.
every season, year round. If you're not careful, if you own your land, you could build hoop houses.
Mhm.
You could do winter growing. So then now
Mhm.
you have a sustainable income year round. That's
Mhm.
365
You,
days.
you be getting deep now,
Yeah.
Tucson.
Yo,
You killing it right now. Y'all are just over here. Don't
But I
relax,
had
man.
I had some notes on that whole communal piece, and Toussaint must have been in my head.
Listen,
no,
y'all
we all
all
tight.
always
We all tight.
yeah.
because my mom, growing up in Savannah, Georgia, she grew up in a time when really, as a community, you had to work together. So they would do that. Everybody had a garden. And so if I grew green beans, or maybe you grew okra, Toussaint and Andrew, you may have had another crop, then they would all come together and preserve that food together and share. And so what you're talking about, Toussaint, is going back to that, where we actually can create our own industries together. And that's some of the lessons we try to impart in the garden with the youth leaders and with the families, that look, we can do this together. And so you see the families they come out with their little starts. Hey, mommy, can we plant this here? I said, come on down, come on down. And so everyone plants together, shares food together, we preserve food together. But that's what it's about, is building that community. And that community does build industry, which is important. It builds industry, it builds security for that industry. We can go on and on and on. See, that's the basis of doing for self. So, yeah, Toussaint, you hit that on the head.
I feel like Andrew's a perfect example of that
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, me and Sister Anna, we got some time. We was in farm school together, urban farm
Mm-hmm.
school, learning how to do this together. And I remember Andrew showing up at GTC, like, hey, what can I do? What can I learn?
Mm-hmm.
He was,
Mm-hmm.
he was new to it, and he found a niche and what was already created
Mm-hmm.
to expand a
Right.
mission that he didn't even know about, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So when we think about just this action, when it's not selfish driven, when it's
Mm-hmm.
community driven for longevity, how many people can actually feed and eat from
Mm-hmm.
that, you know?
Yeah. And I want Andrew to kind of, and I was alluding to that, like, because some of the terminology like starts, right? Raised beds. Like people was like raised beds. So I got a mattress in the house. So I'm gonna do this now. You got to, yeah. You remember, like you got to think, like people was thinking like that. Like now I know what a raised bed is, but before I was like, yeah, you know what I mean. So, um, it being relatively inexpensive to do all these things that you're talking about. You're talking about soil. Where do people even get these things? Like, where does somebody start a raised bed? Like, I want soil. Do I go to somebody's backyard and be like, hey, it's city property, who cares? Let me get this soil real quick. And how does somebody go about that? Because people really want to know.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts, man. Like, is trying to do this at minimum cost. For example, raised beds. We build raised beds sometimes to keep to build up the soil because we're not sure of what's going on underneath. Or you might have it on, some concrete and you have a raised bed with your soil in it. But we can get the material for those from pallets. I've collected so many pallets, broken them down, and made beautiful things with them.
We got to do that, Andrew, man. I was working with pallets and I was just suffering. Sister Anna saw me suffering making these raised beds.
But you got it. You got it finally. We put it together.
Got like
though.
2 of those suffering out here.
And I didn't have a truck either. So what I was doing, I was pulling up on the pallets with my 2 hammers or boards and just breaking them down right there and putting it into the trunk and then bringing that home, busting the nails out of it. I might sand it down a little bit and I might reuse those same nails, And in Springfield, they have at Blunt Park, if anybody's ever rode past, Central High School, they have a compost that comes out there. Now that's city compost that comes from all the leaves and waste, yard waste that we bring, so, and they have their systems of doing it, but it's compost that we can check out, see if it's good. We can use that for free. I do it. I've grown some food. I've had my soil tested. I've had good results, low lead levels, because we had lead in our soil and it got better. Man, it doesn't cost much money at all to do this thing. You could build your own soil. I mean, Tucson is probably a massive compost by now. And it's simply just taking your leaves.
I'm waiting, man. Come on, help me.
Your yard, your waste, and just reusing it. And then you got the best soil black gold that you can add to your garden.
That's right.
That and I'm Andrew. It's so crazy because most of what you just mentioned was free, and so taking the waste. And this is the beautiful thing about me. I'm into holistic, right? I'm holistic healing, holistic nutrition, which is a different concept than a lot of things. So nutrition is different than holistic nutrition. So farming is one of the most holistic acts you can ever do because it requires literally mind, body, and spirit. And so you're talking about taking the waste and the scraps that you eat, right? And cardboard and making that into soil, into richer soil is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely, yeah, man. And if you get some worms involved, you can get some red wigglers. You can buy them. You can get them locally if you're lucky, or you could buy them online for like $20. Get like 500.
Grab a couple pounds. Yeah, you get a good amount for sure change.
Yeah, you definitely
and
can.
Those things are gonna give you the worm castings when they break down the stuff. It's like magic what they do.
Yeah.
You can't buy that Miracle Grow or anything that's gonna match what these worms can do.
And it doesn't take much either, and you don't need much space to do that either. So,
Man, we did it all. We definitely. So when I was first learning about composting, it was like, yo, we live in our houses. How are we gonna do this in our house?
Yeah.
So I went from Sister Anna was one of my first people. She had a bucket, and I bought some worms. I bought about like 1,000 to maybe like 15 to 100 worms. I busted it down into like 5 different our storage bins that we be storing our jeans and our sneakers in. Had one of those, and we was like, how can we create our own soil? At the time, lands in Springfield was shortchanged, so the concept was like, if we could find a recipe to breaking down our own soil, we could buy land that the purpose of it solely is for composting. Where farmers, they drop off their scraps, and we keep measurements and weights of their scraps, and in return, they get soil, they get fresh compost. Yeah. we had some serious ideas, and they still in fruition, you know. But composting, that's something that we talk about farming. You grow your own soil. So when we think about industry, let people find their lane. Some people have a green thumb. Some people they got a dirt thumb. They know how to cultivate some good compost and do it in a way that is efficient, quick, and continual. What's that brother's name? Sister Anna from out in Wisconsin has
Will
established.
Allen.
Will
Ooh,
Allen.
yes.
We just named a farming legend right there. Anybody heard that? Write that name down. He's a legend. He holds it down when we think about urban farming and doing it in winter conditions. When we think about white flight, history of gentrification, economics leaving
I don't
areas.
want you to talk about that yet. We need to get.
Oh.
We're gonna get into that. I listen. We need that. I need you to save that so people can absorb it in one shot. I don't even because it's so much that y'all. It's just so much. I forgot how much y'all. It's crazy. I know that you guys went into the soil and the the cultivation of the soil as well, and what you can do with just the scraps. And then I know Sister Anna is the soil queen, so she's always understanding that. So if people are looking to use their backyard, they have soil, right? So we just got from the person that's an apartment dweller, right? They're renting right now. They don't have the space. And now I have the soil. How do I know I can even use my soil?
That's a great question. And there are two ways to look at it. I'm like Andrew and Toussaint. Let's find the path of least resistance. So ideally, if you want to get it tested, you can send in take a little sample of soil and send it in to UMass, and they'll tell you what the content is in the soil, primarily what the lead level is. Lead occurs naturally. We all have it. We have it in our bodies. It's in the soil. It's when it's elevated that we have issues and can lead to, if you're not careful, lead poisoning and so forth. But let's just say you don't have time for that. In COVID, at the height of it, well, the UMass Soil Lab was down, and the Food Policy Council, they took the lead on this. That's where the raised beds come into play, because raised beds is what it is. It's basically a bed of soil raised above the ground in a wooden structure or a metal structure, and you're not going in ground, but you build it up. So even if you have an area outside and you don't have time for the soil test, you can do raised beds. So you can do both in areas where, and I do a lot of the soil testing and analysis and soil recommendations for people. Oftentimes, okay, it comes back, and if it's no lead issues, go right ahead, go in ground. But even with that, you may have to still build up that soil, because we do live in the city. There is pollution, there is trash, there is just depleted soils, and then you build up in a different way. That's where the compost is great. Adding leaves, taking those food scraps and breaking it down and putting it in the soil that you have. And then the technique I work with, biointensive growing, the nickname is double digging, is where that's exactly what you do, is you dig it twice to kind of bring up what's underneath, which is usually pretty decent, and then you add to it and build up. So that's the short of it.
Knowledge. Geez, it's amazing how much I'm learning now, even though I've learned from you and Toussaint and Andrew and just watching. D.Moss is in the building. I know D.Moss is gonna have a lot of questions because he's just a question guy. You know what I mean? Like I want to open it up to him before anything, but I know the questions are coming in on Facebook, y'all. So in the comments, so I'm gonna have D go into that.
Well, no, Justin, I think right now you guys are flowing. The whole ride home, I'm listening to you guys talk, so I'm gonna let you keep it rolling. I have a couple of questions, but right now you guys are kind of on a vibe, so let's keep that going where you're going with the compost. Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yep. So the composting, again, for me to clarify for myself is like the using of scraps and whatever to create the soil. And then the raised bed is anything that's above ground, right? And we're putting new soil into that raised bed because we can't use the soil that's on our land for whatever reason, usually due to the fact that it's tainted or whatever. All right, perfect. You know what I mean? And we can grow anything. We can grow the kale. We can grow the chard. We can grow tomatoes. Right?
Yep.
So, beautiful. So I really wanted to get into the kind of the brief snapshot of the history of farming, because this is what they call Black History Month, but I don't like saying that. You know what I mean? Which is rooted in farming. Like, people got to understand, in America, it's rooted in farming. We have many other things we do, but in America, it was rooted in farming. And I want you to kind of explain the history of farming for us and what we did, which is farming history period is us. But by the way, people don't understand that. The farmers you see on the television, you guys, they were taught by us. I know. Boom. Yes, we farmed. Okay. But go into the history of farming for the people that need to understand our worth in this country.
Okay. Anybody want to jump in?
Ooh, man, that's a heavy one.
So history of farming in this country.
Well,
And
let's
just
put,
yeah,
you know
go
what?
ahead.
It's hard to say the history of farming in this country because when you look at the founding, Euro fathers, they knew absolutely nothing about farming. You got to look at the indigenous population and what they did, their ability to, when you look at the, not even talking about the southern states, but in terms of what they did right here in Massachusetts, or right here in New England, and how they taught those settlers how to grow corn and squash and all types of stuff. So it's always been there. When you talk about the Africans in America, you're looking. I mean, you're looking at people who came from agrarian societies for the most part. So it was just as natural as waking up and breathing or fishing and hunting. So, but I'll let y'all jump in because then we can talk about George Washington Carver and how he transformed the South when the country was about to starve. But we can get into that. But talk about the history of farming. Anybody who wants to jump in, not just the history of farming, just our ability to grow and how we kept this country alive. Is that where you're going, Justin?
Exactly where I'm going. How we
Okay.
saved the country once again.
Well, I think let's take it from when they took us from the great lands of our ancestors, Africa.
Right.
They took us for the purpose because they were here starving. There was a community of people here who couldn't cultivate the lands. The diseases killed the natives of the land of America, and they needed that. They needed that assistance because they wasn't allowed back in their country. You know, so understand when stepping foot and robbing the knowledge, the resources of Africa's people, it was for the cultivation of rice and what we call the Gullah Islands. You know, it was for we can have a wheat belt in the Jersey, Philly, New York, Delaware area, the wheat belt, which controlled the flour and all that being grown and shipped north, up, and south. We think about cotton, the clothes that we wear. Cotton is a plant. You know, that was being shipped overseas. That was being shipped to the north to be manufactured in the clothing. So these very techniques, when you look at the heat conditions as well, that's something else to think about a lot. Us coming from African lands, the heat conditions we were used to growing in hot conditions. We knew how to cultivate the soil in those hot conditions. So when we think about the South, and you getting 101 degrees consistently, what do you grow in that weather? You grow root vegetables. You know, if you're not coming from lands that is that hot, what do you know to grow? You don't know to grow anything. So I think from there, just the foundation of the robbery of us from the lands to come here was for the knowledge, and then we see the capital. Even in that action, it was a capital action because they made money just on the creating the boats, to ship the homies over here.
And
So that's to America.
If I could just add one piece, people get this whole thing messed up when we get so caught up in the term slaves. And I'm glad you said that, to sign. It's like they didn't just go to grab folks to come up, ignorant folks who knew absolutely nothing. The one thing I know about Europeans is they're damn good observers, and they watch and they learn from everything that we do. From medicine, he talked about the clothing. Let's talk about all the medicinal purposes of everything that we grew from the ground.
Mhm.
So
The-
they brought us here for a reason. I'm glad you said that because there's
Mhm.
no way this country would have lasted without us.
But it was all industry. It was a complete industry.
And I
And
think
one of the things that Tucson, and you mentioned as well, Brother Darrell, is they went to certain regions for certain crops that produce
absolutely,
certain industries.
absolutely,
So, you look at the tobacco belt, you look at, Tucson mentioned the rice belt. And these are things that we brought with us, different seeds. I was doing a brief study on Callaloo, where the plant itself originated, where it came from in Africa, and now we see it throughout the Caribbean and parts of South America. It's a main dish. We eat it a lot here in the States, particularly in our Caribbean communities. But these are things that we brought with us. And
right,
they knew these industries that they needed to make money. And there was a whole economic development that came from our enslavement. So the banks, the insurance companies that insured those boats, and the crops. You're talking about the original crop insurance, and insured us just in case us as a commodity was damaged or we died off or anything like that. And some of the foods that were brought with us was to keep us sustained so that we can work longer and harder. We can work from can't see morning to can't see at night. So that's where those foods that we love so much, the yams and the some of the real starchy dishes, that was really to keep us alive, to keep us
right.
moving. We couldn't eat the real nice healthy stuff that was on Master's table. But that's a whole different story about health and the types of foods
no,
that
we're gonna get
we
into
were
it. We're
able to
gonna get
eat.
into that story.
That's a longer story.
And I'm glad you asked about the history, Justin, because I think a lot of times we get it twisted. We think we know Black history because they tell us about famous personalities, famous
Hmm.
achievements, things like that, but they don't talk about the daily struggles that we overcame on a daily basis, as Sister Muhammad was just saying. So history is just so critical. When you talk about George Washington Carver, people think he just explored peanuts. No,
Mm.
man, this dude. I heard who said soil thumbs. Is that
Green
Soil
thumbs.
thumb? Yeah, that was my word.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
Tucson.
yeah.
That was Tucson.
you're gonna hear me saying that on the radio, on panels, because I'm trying to learn as much as I can about this. When you think of George Washington Carver, people talk about how he created peanut butter, not realize that man created. He taught them how to grow thousands of different types of vegetables down in Notasulga County, down in Alabama.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
He taught them, when you talk about even the land, because they overpopulated the soil with cotton and other things, the soil was dead or
Hmm.
close to it.
Right.
It was folks like George Washington Carver who looked at so some people, it's like people who can sing songs. Some people open their mouths and just, universes are created. Other
Hmm.
people look at the soil and they go, we can fix this. When he
Hmm.
talked about what's a legume? They said something about how he was it
Lean.
discovered that legumes can enrich the soil with nitrogen and prevent erosion.
Hmm.
How
Yeah.
peanuts are high calorie, not just growing
Hmm.
peanuts, but how from growing peanuts, how just the growth of the peanuts, and
Hmm.
I don't know anything, I don't know a lot about it. I'm still reading on it. How it
It's
actually
okay.
transformed the soil so they can grow other types of crops in other seasons.
Hmm.
So people got to understand when you talk about farmers, I think it's
Talking about
more than just
scientists. I'm cutting you
Yeah.
off, man. We're talking about scientists, and that's what gets me upset. He did not get a degree. He's a scientist. What you guys go to get a master's degree on, this man learned through hardship and labor. You
Hmm.
understand? And the growth of what you call Monsanto, the biggest seed corporation in the world, the using of what you would call biogenetic seeds, right? Where they're making them in the labs.
Hmm.
Where did that knowledge come from? To
That came from
hybridize and,
yeah.
and,
Hmm.
and understand that and
Hmm.
hybridization is because of the white people's problem of overusage. We had to
Hmm.
hybridize, crossbreed, and also in other different ways and make new crops to be able to sustain ourselves in the country. We
Hmm.
are that was a scientist. He wasn't a farmer. And farmers are scientists as well. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just need to say that.
I think
If
we
I
should
can,
definitely.
oh, mhm.
I went one quick statement that Sister Anna, you can rock and
Mhm.
roll. I think we should definitely uh, cultivate and communicate and represent Dr. Carver as probably the king of hybrid. You
Mhm.
know, I don't even think we should give that credit to someone else
right,
because
absolutely.
Mhm.
he his exact action of creating of dry depleted soil hybrid vegetables, he realized by having these joint cross, we can get health
Mhm.
and growth at the same time.
Right.
You know, so well, that's a shirt idea.
Yes.
King of Hybrid, Dr.
Yeah.
Carver. Go ahead,
But that,
Sister Anna.
but not just the king of hybrid, which is wonderful. I'm glad you all brought that up. I want to go back and revisit that because really, Dr. George Washington Carver started out as an art student
Yeah.
at college in Iowa and moved into botany shortly thereafter. But he was truly a god of his work. You know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan mentioned that if you want to get close to God, if you really want to talk to God, go talk to a farmer. Because what he was able to do in terms of what they give the fancy label of regenerative farming, he's the father of that. He really is the father of that. All those crops that we're talking about, sorghum and peanut and mustard, they were rotational crops that he discovered that did put things back in the soil when cotton took so much out of it. Cotton was a rapacious, just ate up everything, and there wasn't anything left of the soil. And
Right.
he found that these crops were able, in rotation, to put those nutrients back. And when it was Tuskegee Institute, he traveled to the farmers in this little truck that they had was like a
Yes, he
school
did.
on wheels, showing other farmers how to do the same thing. See, when we go up to another level, let's talk about what we know as CSAs. That is the nice, catchy phrase. But the father of that, Dr. Booker T. Whately, out of Tuskegee again with the pick and pay. He started that.
Hmm.
And so all these things that we started to replenish things for ourselves because things were so depleted, we had to make a change. We had to be innovative. So this shows the innovation that we as a people have. And then going back to Brother D.Moss's question about the history of farming, when you think about all of the people of the earth, all the darker people of the earth, when you think about our indigenous family here in New England, when they arrived here at Plymouth Rock, there's no way in the world they would have survived if it was not for the Wampanoag, the Pecumtuck, our indigenous family that really showed them
Absolutely.
how to eat, how to really eat to live, just how to survive. You know, when we think about in the Caribbean, the Taino in indigenous family, the things that they grew, and all this are very similar to what we brought with us. So it shows how interconnected we are as a people
Right.
and how our growing practices were very necessary for our survival. And that we had to change, we had to do innovations so that we can continue to grow. You know, when I watch my mother graft tomato plants on her own, you know, just she wants the bigger size and the strength of the other tomato plant. And I'll watch her actually take one piece to another. And pretty soon she's got her own variety
Oh wow.
that is delicious and
Wow.
it can sustain the conditions in Maryland. See, that's innovation that we brought with us. That's a part of us.
I like to add on to what you were saying, Sister Anna, because you guys all what we've been talking about is hitting onto a note I had here, which was ancestral linking, relinking, understanding like our conditions here in America, the violation of the act of being brought here, that link was destroyed, and
Mhm.
then through the exploitation of our tech of our abilities, it was then something we kind of shunned away. Coming back to this act of farming, it's going to connect us to our ancestors. I will admit I am one who I come from the generation where I choose not to listen out of my own ignorant arrogance to my elders. So there's been a blockage from knowledge that my elders can pass on to us, and that blockage, that was humbled becoming a farmer because I had to sit at the feet of my elders. Um, and many of these elders were people who couldn't read from books. Many of these elders who was my grandmother. My grandma, she's from Mississippi, born 1950. She's from
Mhm.
descendants of tenant farmers and descendants of slaves. So when she looks at land, she understands land. When she sees vegetables, she smells it. I remember she took sick and they said, go get vegetables. And she said, these vegetables aren't real. I said, Grandma, how do you know? She said, I can smell it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I grew up living on land. I could smell the land. This land has issues. We had a
Right.
problem when we were talking about cultivating of land. We're in a new generation, so we're We're not putting fertilizers on land. We're making our own natural fertilizers. She had a hard time understanding that. But what we have is, if we're going back to this space, we're going to be going back to the South. We're going to go into deep down South Mississippi, sitting at the feet of Black farmers who own land, who could teach us. We may even have to go back to Africa and sit at the feet of elders who are cultivating land there. And that's only rebuilding a link that was torn away, making us stronger. And that's what Dr. Carver was doing as he's traveling, educating farmers. And that, honestly, that's a charge that we should be taking on now, of educating, because there has to be our elders are falling, they're passing the time, their days are numbered. And I sometimes worry that their knowledge has not been stored properly amongst us. We're going backwards sometimes in an act that should be elevating us and freeing us.
It's interesting when Justin told me that we'd be talking about farming, because basically what we focus on is Black health. I told someone this evening that today we'd be on the show and we'd be talking about, as we talk, they said, "What are you talking about today?" I said, "Black health." Well, what's the focus? I said, "Farming." Well, what does farming have to do with health?
Thank you, D. Yes, that's
Then they said, "Well, knowing you and Justin, you guys gonna, connect it back to race. What does farming have to do with being Black and maintaining good health?" So when y'all just broke down the history, then I heard earlier you guys are talking about all the healthy benefits. And then Toussaint, you just talked about your grandmother. She could smell the soil. We used to go down to Tuskegee, Alabama every year for summer, and I watched my grandfather in that field, and I'm looking at just acres and acres of all different types of vegetables. And we just went back down there for my uncle's funeral about a couple of weeks ago. And we're looking at all this land. Nothing has grown there. They haven't grown anything since my grandfather passed back in the late 80s. And I'm looking at this land going, how in the world did he do this? Do you do all that work without a tractor, without all the major tools that, his white neighbors had on their farms and plantations? But he would have, just acres and acres of all different types of vegetables. So when you talk about just that natural innate ability to grow, and dig your hands in the dirt, it's interesting. My dad had high blood pressure, hypertension, passed out one day. We thought he was dying. His eyes rolling up in his head. We didn't call 911. We called my grandmother. And she said, "Bring my son to me now." Put him in his old beat up pickup truck. I drove nonstop, only stopping for gas, getting him down to Alabama, because I'm like, "Oh, please don't let my dad die in the truck while I'm on my way down there." We get him down there, 5 o'clock in the morning. This woman walks way out into the field. I don't know where she went. She came back with like 2 big handfuls of what she called yellow roots and some other vegetables. She broiled them, put them in a jar, heated it up, and told him to drink the whole big mayonnaise jar. He drank it. Man could barely stand, could barely talk. He drank the whole jar. Told him to take a nap. About 2-3 hours later, gave him another jar. By 5-6 o'clock that evening, he was up helping her outside doing yard work. So it was something that the doctors couldn't do. He was bringing them back and forth to the doctor. And it's just so interesting as you talk about who we are, what we are in terms of our relationship to the earth. Watching them do, I'm like you, I wish I had paid attention. I wish I didn't think I was smarter than them. So let me ask you, how do we get more people into farming? For the first time since I've had my house, I've been here about 24 years. Victoria talked me into building a garden out back for her. And we did it. Justin, you've seen it. All types of stuff. How do we get more people to understand this is more than just farming? Toussaint, I think you said it earlier, this is about survival. How do we market this? How do we reframe this and re-promote it back to our folks? They've taken, things that we've done naturally, and they've gotten us to the point where we've distanced ourselves and totally, completely disconnected. How do we get our people to reconnect to this? So I'll just throw that out there for you.
That's a good question. I think a lot of it has to do with just representation and seeing that it could be done, and a lot of the work that like Sister Anna's doing with the youth. I see the results of that. I see how engaged they are on what they learn from it, and the pride that they have when they finish a task. So I think seeing Toussaint out there more, and just like seeing us out there making it gangster. Like there's a guy in LA that gardening is gangster. You know, so
Right.
forgot his name, somebody, but Ron. Yeah, but
Ron,
you gotta make it cool.
I don't know.
Like
Yeah, I know who you're
it's
talking
a
about.
cool thing. It's very like like people hit me up like, hey, you got green tomatoes, like so I'm like, oh dang, you can like cook these out, you know what I mean? Because I'm a part of the history that has been disconnected. I don't have direct linkage with my father's side of the family to figure out what's going on as far back as so
Right.
people like me, we're stuck with the anger, looking at I try to look up YouTube videos, how to do this, how to do that. I'm seeing these older white guys,
Hmm.
taking this on, and I'm seeing all the land they have. So I think what's missing is representation and us putting the content out there because, like you said, it's our history, and
Hmm.
I think that's a big part of it.
Hmm.
Absolutely. That's dope.
Hmm.
Anybody else?
I think making sure our story is told in this. I remember one of the first classes I did in Boston for a group of women, black and brown women. I asked the question, well, how many of you think that this is something that old retired white women do? And every hand went up. How many of you think this is expensive? Every hand went up. So I had to reframe it. And I like the way you put it, Brother Dale. You said, repackaging. If I could show you how to do this for less money, less time, would you be interested? And I was showing them how to grow food in milk crates. And so our story has to be told. A lot of what we talked about tonight, I didn't get that in school. That was from research. That was from, listening to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It was my own, it was other study, but it was not in school. And they don't teach that. We said it. What they teach about Dr. George Washington Carver, he was a peanut man, peanut butter. I mean, he had many inventions. Peanut butter was something he worked with, but it was the peanut as a rotational crop. So that story, our stories have to be told. That's very important.
Right.
And the more that, as Brother Andrew said, more of that representation, our representation in this work is seen, particularly with our youth, then we turn that corner. Then we change the narrative because now it's our narrative that we write.
Absolutely. Narrative is so important. It's so critically important, which is why we do the Black Health Show every Wednesday. It's like people, whether you watch it or not, we're going to be here. We're going to keep pushing it because it has to be our narrative. And if we don't tell our story, then somebody else is. Something as simple, well, not really simple, as growing tomatoes and
Mm-hmm.
potatoes and anything else that you can grow. It's just so important.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Just.
Um, I know people want the strong link to understand how Black health. I do nutrition. You know what I mean? I live nutrition. I think people have to understand mind, body, and spirit. There's something called
Mm-hmm.
grounding, right? And that's a
Mm-hmm.
big concept that white people took and made a word from it, right? We call that farming, right? You didn't farm. A lot of times you did have farming shoes. Like my grandma in Grenada took my Nikes that I loved that had farming shoes, right? But they have 2 acres of land behind the house where they just grow kale. She had high blood pressure. She got bush tea, right? Which is what you would call the white people would call the weeds, right? We understand these weeds are the medicinal herbs because anything from the soil, right, has what the soil has. Soil has most of your soil is going to contain about 92 vitamins, essential minerals, which we need on a daily basis. And so I just wanted to make the link between understanding that like food that we eat has to contain those vitamins, essential minerals.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't have access to that food, therefore we are sick. And people don't understand another thing is that our nation that we call the best in health and the best in modern medicine, we are the most malnourished
Mm-hmm.
nation, top 10 in the world. And you see that and you understand what that means. It's not the potbelly boy from Africa, right? No, that's because they took away his water. I'm talking about the people that are not getting enough vitamins and central minerals because they're not getting it from the food because the food don't have it in the soil. And
So,
so
so you're saying that we're starving with full bellies?
we're starving with full
Mm-hmm.
bellies. And
Okay.
the reason why we're seeing this narrative of what malnutrition look like is because that's what they've been pushing. Malnutrition is the non-access to real reliable soil-fed food, right? And not the ones they made in the laboratory from Monsanto, those seeds that they made, and they don't have to put it in soil. They just make it in a lab in a petri dish. farming is essential to health. Most of your diseases, even though doctors don't learn this because they don't know about farming and biodiversity and all that stuff, they just know about I'm not disrespecting them, they know more about pharmaceuticals and things of that nature. When it comes to food, most of your diseases are caused by a lack of minerals. When you talk about anything from hypothyroidism, right? You talk about diabetes, you talk about, there's always going to be a link to vitamins and essential minerals.
Right.
And you can look at the research up and down all around. Farmers are our new doctors, and not new because that's something we just learned. No, new because of the fact of we are now shining towards what our ancestors have given us. And when you dig into soil, that grounding they talked about, the grounding that they make a big thing now, right? That's making that link back to your ancestors. And I'm not gonna go off on a tangent, but I'm gonna add this piece. If you ever notice people that get sick, right? In America, if they go back to where their ancestors are from, this happens, and you can ask them, most of their problems and ailments will go away. When they touch land, they touch soil, what happens? A lot of the times, and I've heard this multiple and multiple times, when I went back to Grenada, I have no problem with no asthma. I was running up and down the beach all day. No problem. I swear to gosh, I got off the plane. It was in New York, in Times Square, and had problems breathing. So we have to understand that the soil is more than just what we see on TV. It's the cultivation of the food, which gives us our vitamins and minerals, which opens up our mind, body, and spirits. And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but man, I'm so happy y'all came here today, man.
Can I ride on your tangent real quick?
Yeah, I know we got to go past it.
Right.
You got to go past it. Let's go past it.
We got a time. All right. So I knew Justin was gonna come in here and talk about the physical benefits of eating foods and how it cleanses our bodies. When I was a farmer, I used to brand our vegetables that we grew at Garden and Community as organic, super local food. Because when you think about the food we get, food gets transported.
Right.
It gets grown in different places and it gets transported. And if we don't have a network where we are gaining food in a 10-hour radius, 10 hours brings us to Philadelphia. All right. If we don't have a 10-hour radius of food and it's further than 10 hours, we're talking about food starting to break down. It's starting to lose its nutrition. Okay. If we are getting food shipped from California, if we're getting peppers don't grow in the wintertime right now unless it's an indoor facility. So we're getting our peppers from Mexico and California. It's getting shipped over here. I tell you right now, those peppers aren't coming over here at a mature rate. They're getting picked early, being shipped over and being sprayed so it can mature on its shipment over here, so we can eat it. We then consume that food, which Justin speaks about, that lacks the vitamins and the minerals to do the essential healing to our body, which heals our cells. And when we think about cells being healed, we are healing our DNA. And imagine if people with healed DNA, Black people, melanated people, Black children, Black women, Black men, are walking around here with super strong DNA because of the foods that we're eating is rebuilding those DNAs. So when we are talking about healing, when we want to go to a counselor or sit in a healing circle and talk about the traumas of our past, we could speak about it, go eat a meal that's going to heal those very places so we can then stand up and move upon it. So food in its essence is a mental key. It's the medicine to our mental breakdown that we've been suffering for many years. How can we detox the body physically and not think about the mind and its ability to detox, our spirit and its need to detox? So when I think about food, I think about, anytime I talk to a health profession, I tell them, so what's the conversation about what you feeding them? What's in their diet that's allowing them to detox the built up stress that's stored in the fat? Whether I'm a skinny guy, I could be overweight. The stresses that's stored up in that fat. Justin can definitely speak on that. What are you doing to relieve the body from those stresses and those toxins as you're seeking to liberate their mind? Because if you're trying to liberate a mind where there's blocks, it's going to be stopped. It's like a blood clot. You know, we just putting something in someone's mind and it gets stuck. It gets stuck. And I think a lot of us been existing like that. We have so much information in our heads, but we don't have the energy to make it into an action.
Right.
We start eating some vegetables, eating some fruits. I just ate some raspberries. I got some energy. Drinking some water. Justin says it every day. 30 seconds. Drink some water. Drink some water. Eat some vegetables. 1 salad a day. Even a green drink a day. That level of energy is going to boost your cells and your DNA. So now you're able to motivate and put those thoughts to actual reality.
So you're saying there's a direct correlation between mind, body, spirit, and diet?
Yes.
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 Okay.
One of the things that the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad talks about in How to Eat to Live, you know, you can have the world's greatest diet or food regimen, but it's what you think. So it's what you put up here. And we've not only been given bad physical food, but we've been given bad mental food, bad spiritual food. So just as as we look at this whole thing, it's holistic. You know, Justin and Toussaint and Andrew talked about it. It's holistic. So it's what we eat. It's what we think. It's what we see. What we're around. All that is very, very important. And something that Toussaint said about that, and I was taking notes as you were talking, Toussaint. The art of cultivation, you know, that art of cultivation also, are we cultivating ourselves? Are we cultivating our communities as we cultivate the soil, as we cultivate the crops? So the whole idea of farming, it's not just the building of soil and the growing of healthy, nutrient dense food. See, that's the key. You can grow food, but if that soil isn't healthy, you won't have the healthy food that's necessary. But it's also the pride and the cultivation of the community as a whole. And when I work with the youth leaders over at Home City Housing, and this group, you know, they've been with the garden for a couple of years, I see that cultivation in them. I see the pride that they take in their community, in where they live, how they watch over the garden, and now how they watch over each other and the families that are there. See, cultivating those relationships, looking at, they see themselves as caretakers of the community. And so that's that next level when you're thinking about farming and cultivating. We're cultivators of the community.
Man, I
Good
just
info.
it's so much, D.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. They said about 30 years ago there was a pharmaceutical convention, and they were talking about government research, and the history of medicines. I guess the things that we rely on from the mainstream community, and they were talking about whether or not credit should be given to indigenous populations in regards to how they utilize plants, not just for not just in terms of eating, but in terms of medicinal purposes. So people need to understand. Sometimes it's like people say, well, you know, you better go to a doctor. Don't call Sister Muhammad for no healthy food. You need to go to a doctor and get some medicine, not realizing that some of the same drugs that they give you are coming from some of the same plants, and same resources, natural
White
resources.
willow bark.
Say it again.
White willow bark, cinchona tree bark. What they used this year for I think malaria. The malaria drug comes from what you would call cinchona tree bark, right? Which they found in Peru, and the Spaniards took that. They got cinchona tree bark, which is a bark that helps stop the manifestation of flu-like symptoms, and they use it for malaria all over the world. And they capitalize on this. White willow bark, nature's pain medicine, where they got the ingredients for your aspirin from. So you can find this on .govs. Okay, this is information on .govs. But then we create and we snap the links of that chain so they don't see the connection between the herbs you see in your yard, dandelion root, that they weed out, right? And then guess what? They sell it they sell it at the grocery store and tell you to buy it because they farmed it, but it's right outside your yard, right? And so they break the chain so you don't have the information. Right. And so people think we talk hogwash, right? I give a lot of credence to people that are in medicine. We have PAs here, we have nurse practitioners. They hold their space and they hold it well. They have their purpose. And so do farmers, and so do you would call herbalists. People that understand the land, right? They have to understand there's a link. Pharmaceuticals was made off of what you would call Chinese ancient medicine, right? But also it was made off of what you call African indigenous medicine, which they never give the link to, right? So you understand that, because guess what? Before we came on slave ships, the colonials watching something where they put the herbs in their hair, and they put seeds in their hair, and they would braid their hair with the seeds of Africa. They would also swallow the soil from Africa, so they never lost where they were from. This is information, and they try to break the chains. Never let them break the chains, and that's what farming does. It brings the links back together. People have to understand we have to bring the links back together, whether it be generational, right? Whether it be through health, whether it be through gender, whether it be through family. That farming really does bring everything back together.
Absolutely. And I think more conversations like this need to happen on a regular basis. Because if we don't talk about it, or if we only have this type of dialogue in private circles, the masses of folks will never get the information. When I think farming, I think back to the nation and how they've, all the farming that they've done over the years has kind of set the tone for me personally. But I know there are folks who have been doing it all along. But I think it was the nation that actually made this a part of, intellectual conversation around furthering the development of Black people here in the States. So I think conversations like this need to happen on a regular basis. I'm sitting there listening to y'all talk going, man, I could take everything y'all saying right now and write a book and make me $1 million. There's a wealth of information. And I just think it's just so critical. We talk about healthcare disparities. What we're really talking about is poor diet.
A history of lack of access that has resulted in poor diet.
Right.
Let's not be let's understand. I think to a certain extent we're victims. We are living victims of a history of lack of resources, where we've been striving to survive. Unfortunately, some of us strive for whiteness, some of us strive for different liberations, and in that strive, stresses come about, ailments come about that, I don't believe, me personally, I made this statement today, out of heart disease, diabetes, and all that. Is that generationally? Can I be born? Can I give that to my child? No. But my actions, my habits can be passed on to my child. And if they start with that at a younger age, the disparity is being seen at an earlier place. We laugh in the streets. If you make it to 25, 30 on the streets, you ain't gonna make it to 50 because your diet's screwed up. And I'm starting to see that more and more. I'm starting to see friends of mine's teeth rotted. You can see the unhealth. You can see the rot of life starting to break down their body after we make it past 25, 30. So I think it's something that we need to understand. Like, we're victims of this, but being victims, victims don't get hand. They have to break from that victimhood. Toussaint Louverture was a great liberator who helped Haiti gain its freedom, and but I guarantee you, the people who fought behind him wanted that freedom as well. So I think as a people, we have to start to understand that if we want mental freedom, if we want spiritual freedom, we have to start doing acts of freedom, doing, and that even in that means doing free acts that help people become free. We can free them from their dumbness. Free dumb. I used that one time. That's the second time I used that, Justin. But on some real, like, I think that we really, D, you hit it on the head, and we have to make this joint cool. Like, we when we see people out here doing good health, like, hey, what's making your skin shine so good? I've been drinking them strawberry juices. I've been eating my strawberries. We have to start having events and keeping it real funky. Saying, you know what, we love our people, but we're not having meat right now because meat ain't helping us, and I can't feed all these people who need liberation by cooking on the grill. So we're gonna get some salad, and we're gonna have some lemonade. And we're gonna call up Miss Jen, and she's gonna fry up some oysters, and we're gonna have some fried chicken on the side. But they oysters, like we have to think, we have to have a standard to what we need. When people come around us, they, not saying that we have meat haters. I'm not saying become a meat hater if that's something you chose to be, but we can't talk freedom and seek freedom and not do acts of freedom.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I have a question for y'all. Justin said something a few minutes ago. So, I'm sidebarring. He said when he was in Barbados or Grenada.
Grenada.
All right, Grenada. When you're out there, I hear you talking about the food that you ate, but also the sunlight. As we talk about farming, we talk about the importance of sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
We're really not too different from the plants that we're hoping to cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, when you're out there farming, you're out in the sun, you're getting
Mm-hmm.
fresh air and you're getting sunlight. They're
Vitamin
giving,
D.
black women, they're constantly giving them vitamin D prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
When you can get that naturally from the sun
Mm-hmm.
while you're out there farming, growing food that can, can somebody talk about that? Because I don't know a lot about it. It's just kind of common sense for me.
Mm-hmm. When I was growing up in California, you were outside a lot. It wasn't anything to go outside and stay out there for hours. And my husband grew up in Tampa, Florida, and that's what you did. You stayed outside, and that vitamin D, that's the best way to get it. It's through sunlight, through our skin, and to stay out as long as we can. And I know, unfortunately, due to white supremacy, we've been made afraid of the sun, and we shouldn't be. Of course, you may put on whatever you need to keep from getting skin cancer or things like that. But that sun is very important to be outside. And I don't see our youth outside as much as it was when I'm dating myself. But, when I was growing up, that's what we did. You did your chores, you did your homework, whatever you need to do, and you go outside. And that's one of the things that working with the youth leaders, teaching them and showing that, no, it's cool to be out here because you need that sun. You get energy from the sun. Being inside all day long, you're missing it. So that energy, that real natural vitamin D that you're talking about, brother Daryl, that's where it comes from. It's the sun.
Okay.
I think it connects back to understanding science.
Mm-hmm.
We've been disconnected from the understanding of science and how we are walking science.
Mm-hmm.
I have the fortunate ability to be teaching science this year in the Springfield Public School System. And as I was talking to my fourth graders about energy, I communicated that we are energy.
Mm-hmm.
Us, we sit here, we are bodies of energy, and we have to understand we need to get refueled.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy, that comes from the sun, that comes from the food we put in our bodies. So once we start to, I think that's also been like a black problem of people of diaspora. We've been shunned from the sciences. Yo, you turned off my light. Yo,
we can still hear you though. Keep
Yeah,
going,
we can
baby.
still hear you.
Yeah, I think we've been disconnected from the sciences, and we need to start embracing these sciences because this is, as we see what we're going through right now. If we don't know science, what we're victims. We're
Yeah.
out there, we're strung
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
So it's important we understand these sciences.
And so
Foundational.
it's so important because go ahead, my fault.
No. Say your thought. Get out.
So the reason why you have to learn the sciences is because we already know the sciences. They just use big words. So I'm gonna use the big words for the people that don't believe us. Vitamin D is what you will call an immune booster, right? It helps your immune system. It also helps your kidney, right? And also helps in the what you would call the alkalizing of your red blood cells, right? And so we hear about alkalinity, right? Vitamin D is one of the biggest alkalizers. Vitamin D is also important for what? Calcium, right? So for us to have strong bones, we have to have calcium or calcitriol, since they want to use big words, right? So the sciences do two things. They break the chains again, right? And I like to link it back, so you can't give me all this jargon, which I can be like, all right, this means this. So you need vitamin D, black people, more than your white counterparts, right? You hear about melanin. We have a whole bunch of melanin. That's also a good and bad thing for us in this place because we're equatorial people, meaning we live close to the equator. So we need that much more sun. White people have melanin too, but they have what you would call, their body has been made to take up the vitamin D and use it faster. We have so much melanocytes, we need more vitamin D. So that's why. So we have so much melanin, we need more vitamin D than they do. And that's why we have vitamin D deficiency. Also can make some links to iron deficiency as well, right? So we have to understand that the big words they're using, right? And when they give you that vitamin D or that calcium supplement, right, you might just need to go out in the sun. Some doctors are good. Like my cousin, he's a and hopefully he watches this, right? He's an oncologist, and what he tells people is like, listen, you have vitamin D. I'm not putting you on a medication. Take a vacation. literally, right? And so that's all you guys, 15 minutes of the sun a day, even in the wintertime, sun gazing, right? It can help you. It helps your mood as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because vitamin D is also something that helps at the cellular level. If your cells are not detoxifying themselves, they need vitamin D to detoxify themselves as well. And so we have to break the change. And like he said, makes the links to science, right? Our doctors have to start learning more about what they would call natural healing, which is not natural healing, which is just science, right? We have to get back so we can break the change. People have to start becoming naturopathic doctors, but better off become farmers, because guess what? Farmers are the ones that made us understand vitamins and minerals. We didn't know anything about not we, sorry. Our white counterparts did not know anything about vitamins and minerals until they start talking about farming. They started understanding all 92 vitamin central minerals that our body needed because of the fact of the farmers. The farmers were the ones that be able to take the soil and tell you it was depleted, but they didn't use big words from it, right? They just understood that this is missing because of the fact of the, guess what? The kale is yellow now. So it's missing what, Sister Anna? If the kale is yellow, you're telling me what is, you know what I mean?
God.
Exactly.
It needs some calcium.
Exactly. Exactly. Because guess what? It's losing pigment. And calcium, guess what? Vitamin D and calcium are linked. And so if you don't get vitamin D, you don't get calcium. And guess what? You use your pigment, people. And so you see how farmers broke that down. That's the same thing for the human body. And they were the reason why we were able to understand vitamin central minerals. And that's why you have the GNCs today. And that's why you have nutritionists today, because of farmers. And because of what? Us. We were farmers. Sorry to go on for another tangent.
And I want to build on. I want to use.
Go ahead, Toussaint.
I think what we need to think about, as Justin's speaking, is how we have our babies that we have them going to school, and this is when we think about future conversations. We're farming. People's going to emulate us farming, but how are we connecting them back to that science? How are we raising our babies to be herbalists? We need doctors. Trust and believe, we need doctors, but we need doctors who know the science of our genetics, who exist in the history of our DNA. So when we're talking about problems, we understand, oh, this person needs this particular element, and we're not having issues as our fallen, our assassinated brother, Dr. Sebi, who has been discredited for actions of saving his people,
Right.
for sure.
And if I can build on that too about our children and science, we really have to help them make that connection. Unfortunately, the school systems do a good job of breaking that and not encouraging our children to go into that. But we definitely, and I find with farming, with gardening, that connection can be made with science. That we are science. Toussaint, I love what you said about when you're working with your fourth graders, you tell them, I am energy, you are energy. We are biology, we are chemistry, we are physics. And that's how we have to even bring gardening. We are gardening, we are farming. This is us, this is a part of our DNA. So we have to make sure that we make that link for our youth, for our children, so that they know that this is a part of them, that this is them.
And it's not just something academic that someone can teach you out of a book. This is real life. This is something you can experience in real life. Here's a practical application. This is who we are. And I think we've disconnected because everything seems very Eurocentric and very academic. I shy away from the academic stuff. So it's like, even if it's for my own good, I'm like, I don't want to hear about all that. But I'm listening to you guys talk, and I'm like, damn, I just got a science lesson for free. I just send somebody a check.
I'll take that.
So I just think it's really, I'll send it to you. I just think it's important. I just think as you talk about farming, it's interesting how all these other branches sprout out in the conversation in terms of just how vast this conversation really, really is, and how healthy it is for you in so many different ways. When he talks about, mind, body, soul, and the connection between all of it. If you're growing your own food, you're getting all the vitamins and nutrients you're ever going to need. You can feed your family. You're outside, you guys getting fresh air, you're getting sun. There's just so many things you're doing in these, 3, 4, 5 hours you're spending outside in the summertime, spring, summer, or whenever. It's just critical. And I'm just glad y'all said that, because now this year I'll be out in the yard a whole lot more with Vicky doing what she does.
And I think also, to add to what you're saying, we have to, I think as much as you're gonna be with your lady, I'm
Yep.
gonna be with my lady, I'll be with my homies, we're gonna be farming. We have to find ways we bring it our our abundance, our blessings, we bring it to one another. You know, because D, you could be having a hard time growing some squash in your backyard, and all you gotta do is talk to Paco, you know, and Paco tell you like, yo, back home, we'll throw this up in the soil, or you know,
Yeah.
you may be growing zucchini, and we know
Right.
zucchini, for anybody who grows zucchini, you're going to have that beetle who eats at your base.
That
All
vine
you have
squash
to
borer.
right,
I hate that sucker.
all you have to do is wrap your base up in some cloth with some aluminum foil, and you good. You
So
know,
we're
but
gonna
if
have some different type of family gatherings.
Yes.
yes, you
Yes.
know,
All
this
right.
is sustainable family gatherings right here.
This
Absolutely.
is
You know,
Yeah. But
we
that's
also
what
have
we
to learn.
did.
Yeah,
That's
we
what we
did that.
did. Yeah, that's what we did.
Learning how to cook with the food,
Mm-hmm.
because hey, you know, we can't say let's grow the food. I used to have tons of people. I saw when I was working in the farm. I was one I worked this a CSA, community supported agriculture system, had 75 people getting
Mm-hmm.
vegetables using
Wow.
their EBT. But I tell you, of them 75, only 20 of them was eating them vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
because the other numbers, they didn't know how to cook the food in a
Ah,
way that was healthy. They didn't know how to hold the food in a week's
Right.
time,
Right.
or the food, because they weren't normal eaters of this, it'll become an abundance and it will start to waste. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, that's my money leaving. So I'm a pause on this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff, but if I don't have the skills, you
Mm-hmm.
know, what am I going to do with it? So I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, to answer your question, D, earlier, I think, you know, I have to say it, you know, and we've been talking about this for years, but having those farming schools, having those spaces, those educational spaces where people can come and get the knowledge of how to farm, how to take care of their body, how these vegetables actually break down in your body, metabolize. You know, we need to start thinking about how we're holding these spaces, and also at the end, providing certificates
you just did
of
it. We did it. We did it right now. Thank you.
yeah. But it's like imagine someone coming through a session of
Mm-hmm.
all our knowledge, breaking down history and science, and at the end we having 15 graduates that we hold a celebration for, who now we is defined in our city as farming scholars.
Mm-hmm.
You
wow.
know,
Wow.
and then from that we have another year. Those 15 can educate more. You know, they're going into the schools, and they
Mm-hmm.
got, you know, we are in essence creating a standard of importance amongst
Mm-hmm.
ourselves that we are then demanding others to recognize.
Right.
I have a note on here for nation building, because I think about Marcus Garvey as we talk about this.
Yep.
You know, Marcus Garvey was a brother that constantly talked about black power, black
Mm-hmm.
ownership, you know, developing a black dollar,
Mm-hmm.
developing that black knowledge, that
Right.
sacred knowledge that our
Right.
ancestors hold, that
Mm-hmm.
again becomes wealth because we hold it within us. We
Mm-hmm.
pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I think I just dug myself in a hole, but me and Justin been talking about doing a farm school and all that back in the day. Me and Sister Anna definitely, you know, talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
We need to make that happen, basically, is what you're saying.
How hard?
No,
Let
no,
me
we're
yeah,
definitely
let me
gonna make
ask
that
you,
happen.
how hard is it to make something like that happen? I mean, but I don't know. I'm
It's
old school. I'm like,
it's not.
if you
it's
give
not.
people the
It's
idea,
not.
how hard is the implementation?
We did it. Sister Anna and me did it on a small scale to
Mm-hmm.
see how it worked.
Right.
Me,
Right.
Tucson, Sister Anna are seeing it like how good it can work and how easy it can work.
Right.
Because our journey, we had a little urban farm. We had kale,
Mm-hmm.
we had tomatoes, we had cucumbers,
Mm-hmm.
we had chard, and
Mm-hmm.
then we were really. Andrew was that missing piece for
Yeah,
me.
Andrew's the
Yeah.
missing link.
He's the
Andrew
missing
was the
piece.
missing link because look at what this does, right? And so we're missing in our schools because we only have it at Putnam, what they will call what they call it in the schools when they learn how to use
Horticulture.
no
Vocational training.
vocational training.
The
So
vocational school.
so vocational schools, right, had shop and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what Andrew does.
Mm-hmm.
He taught
Right.
that by himself. And the thing about it is, you guys talk about how to make it fun. All of us right here speak the language of our people, right? And so that's at the end of the day.
I'm still learning that language, bro.
No, people tune into D because he speaks the language of the people.
Mm-hmm.
People listen to Sister Anna because she speaks to, and people see Andrew. Every time I see Andrew, I'm like, yo, this dude's dope. Like First of all, man, he just looks like he knows so much, and then you see him with what he makes. It's like, yo, this is crazy, and he looks like he's 15, right? And so now you're looking at it like, I can do this. That's not a problem, and I'm slow. So you gotta. Sister Anna saw me struggling, but I made it happen, right?
He did.
And Tucson, I would call Tucson, but this we all have it here, like every single person, and people think they're like, okay, I have nothing to offer to this program. Like, no, you have everything to offer, and I think is now it's about implementation, in which we already have. Sister Anna already has programs. Tucson already has programs. Andrew already has programs. D.Moss has a network. I just have a space. Guess what? The story's
make
done.
it happen. Right.
That's
right.
it.
So, all right, who's the other sister we had on from the Bay Area, from the Bay McKnight?
Liz.
Okay. So the last when we had her on the show, she talked about some of the things you guys are talking about, and talked about, I don't know when, sometime in March or April, her coming on like once a week and just telling people what they should be doing to get their yards ready for gardening. As you talk about farming school, can we do something like that where we just come on and just telling people how to prep your yard? It's one thing to go out there and say, okay, you want a garden? All right, I'll build all your raised beds. I'll give you everything you need. You got the space. What else? It's one thing to do that. It's another to know, okay, how do I prep my soil? I heard you guys talk. What's the thing when you guys mixing up the soil and
with composting?
The compost.
Oh, yep.
Got the barrel out back. What can we be doing now to add to that compost? These are things that people need to know and they struggle with. So rather, we can YouTube it, but looking at the wealth of knowledge, I got 4 professors on with me right now.
But so Daryl, I'll be honest.
Say it again.
You want to finish your thought? I wanted to speak on that real quick.
Nah, I had this tendency to overtalk, so I'll let you.
It's fine, boss. Great words come out your mouth, man. So I'm always listening. I agree with you. I think that we do own a wealth of knowledge, but we and we need to hold spaces where the knowledge is free access. But then we have to understand this knowledge is sacred knowledge. This knowledge you ain't opening up no book. You tapping into DNA historical information. Right. When you sit at our feet, you tap it into a George Washington Carver in 2021. Right. So I'm not gonna say we looking to exploit, but there has to be an investment of self in this as well. And we're not talking large investment. We're not talking Yeezys. I don't want a pair of Yeezys for this knowledge, But what we are saying is when one starts to invest economically, when they're putting themselves out there, you're going to chase it a little harder. You're going to think twice about, hold on, I got vegetables growing in the backyard. So hey, I think we're going to make some kale chips. We're going to do something with this kale.
I'm knocking on 60, so when you say we ain't asking for Yeezys, you got to break that down for me. Are you simply saying that there's a market rate for the information that you'll be imparting? Tell me exactly what you're saying.
Yes, I believe that to a certain extent we have to begin to make this understood as there's a market to this knowledge.
There's more than a market.
And to gain this knowledge it takes an investment. It is I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been doing this since I've been 20 years old. Me and Sister Anna went through 3 years of urban farm school together. We were taught how to farm and do this work. Andrew, he's learning and cultivating himself, So to a certain extent, like what Justin says, we know different than the doctors. When you go to the doctor, insurance is paying they $20.
So say it like this. So for all the viewers, we'll be replaying this all week long. There is a potential that you can get a farmer school going, but people need to understand, this is America. Nothing is free because time, energy, expertise, all that stuff comes at a cost. It means that somebody else sacrificed to get this information to share with others. And the same way you would pay to take a class on mechanics or computers, you'll be able to take a class to learn how to better farm wherever you're at and whatever your situation may be. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Sure. And when you walk away with this class, understand you're walking away with the expertise of Andrew, who knows how to build beds with the proper wood that can store the water.
Right.
You're walking away with knowledge of how to cultivate your backyard soil, how to cultivate soil in your home for 12 months. So you'll walk away with a compost bin that has worms that you could then build your own compost in. You're going to be walking away with a Bible, your farm Bible, that you can go to that breaks down how you're planting rotation. So when you think about farming, you're not thinking about this year. You're thinking about the next 3 years.
Okay.
You know?
And
So,
I think you gotta know, like, we charged Sister Anna, right?
We did. We
like,
did.
we that's not even a mind of,
we did.
I don't think of freebies in life, and there's no such thing because nothing is free, whether you exchange the energy or not.
Right.
And so that's a given. Right.
And you know what? Let me interrupt you for a second. The mere fact that we have to come out and say that, we want to charge, it's like if you're going to start the school, then we get it going, and we assume there should automatically be an assumption that there should be a cost. You dig what I'm saying? I mean, I write poetry. I write poetry. I spit poetry. In order to come see me spit my poetry, are you going to pay me? It costs $20 a ticket to get in. But it's poetry. It's free information. It's free, whatever. I can do it right here for just if I wanted to. But there's a cost for everything. So I think getting our people to the point where people don't even question. We spend over $1.7 trillion annually as a collective, which means that we have the expendable income, and we already know that if something is really important to us, the sweatshirt right here costs, just because my son graduated from there, I bought the sweatshirt for almost $50. It has 3 letters on it. We have money to spend to learn this. And what's really critical, I know just from what I learned about the teas when I get sick, how important that information is. I kill myself with teas and collard greens right now. That's information I would gladly pay for. So let's get back to, anyone watching should know that, again, there's a cost for everything. What's the probability of getting a farmer school within the next year or so?
It's already done.
It could happen before that.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it can.
It's already done. I'll see y'all in March.
Let me reframe my question. Let me reframe it.
Week in March.
We got folks in our community who basically some of our job basically is just get the information out. What type of help do you need to get the information out? Because you guys had a farming school, you guys are teaching this stuff, and I ain't know nothing about it. So how can I help get word out that you guys are offering this service?
I think we in a time now. I think our 2 biggest things, let's be honest, we live in a COVID time.
Yep.
So we need to be able to get the information that we are studying and learning to people, whether they want to come together or separate. So, having these remote atmospheres, whether it's the Zooms or whatever, then it's having locations, even if it's small locations.
Let me just say this. Facilities are not an issue. Pay per stream is not an issue. It's just a matter of, again, utilizing the resources. The same way we'd be utilizing you as a resource to learn about farming. You reach out to folks, I need a facility for 20 people.
Right.
Can you help me lock it down? That's not a problem. I need a facility for 40 people. That's not a problem. We want to do pay per streaming. We got cats that can walk you through that as well. So that's not a problem. The problem is we're spending more time focusing on things that aren't a problem. How can we get this school up and running? How can I start spreading the word? Tell me what you need from me offline, and I'll help any way I can. Because this is just, I don't want to wait till I'm 80 to actually learn how to grow a tomato the right way.
What it sounds like now is, like minds are necessary to put things together. And one of the things Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about is you have to bring like minds together. Right here, we've got a mastermind group to do this. So Toussaint, you and I have done this. Justin, you and I have done this. This group right here, we need to come together. We've got access to venues, put our curriculum together, put, the whole thing together. It shouldn't take long because we're all bringing stuff together. And then we've got the promo king right here, D.Moss, so the promotions can be taken care of. But we just have to do it. We just have to be like Nike now and just do it.
Justin put it out there. All the people who's watching it, when you see us, let March 1st come by, and if there ain't no class, call us out.
Say something.
The funny thing is, we already have the class. Both of us been sitting here.
I know we've been talking about it, but we don't got people signed up. So March.
That's it. Let's go. I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna send you the link. I'm gonna send you the link, D, and it's
Okay.
gonna be the sign up online. So you guys gonna be able to sign up, and
Okay.
it's gonna have the dates and everything. It's gonna be streamlined. I'm gonna send you the link, and
Talking a lot,
this is
bro.
my
You're making a lot of promises. We said
by next Wednesday. This is because it's Tucson. We already did this, Sister
I
Anna.
know.
Did we not already do this?
I have
We
the
are,
curriculum already, so
I
we
got
just
it's
need
mine
like
your
ready.
piece,
all I
Toussaint.
gotta do is
We
make a
just
link.
need your
That's
piece,
nothing.
Andrew, and then
Well,
Justin's got the link, so we just gotta make this thing happen. That's
y'all
all I can
formalize
say.
the process, and I see my boy Professor Mac. Mac Rittens is saying that he'll definitely help with the process. I want nothing out of this except to see this thing up, running, and rolling. Whatever I can do to help. Justin, I want to take a few minutes because we're at the hour 45-minute mark. I just want to read some of the comments in fairness to some of the folks who have been rocking with us for a minute. Jesse Lewis says facts. Companies now are money driven and focus on the digging and not the planning. They use up all the resources we have and strain the plant without thinking about the effects. Rhonda Hoss's Andrew Larian and Sister Anna have both helped my garden. Y'all so smart. She said I guess she said her soil was tested at UMass. Alicia Brown says she's listening. She's all ears. Mac Ritten says malnourished with full bellies. Something was said. Tanita Council said true. And to Justin, you're not slow. Don't speak that into existence. Mark Austin, what's up, good, bruh? He said, T, speak it. You're right. Into the future, right? Ruby Maddox said, all my favorite people. Tamika Bennett says, I'm late. What's going on? So, Justin, when I'm done, if you can just give everybody a quick summary of the conversation today, that'd be dope. Max said, same. Let me know what y'all need on the education side of it. Tamika says she likes that. Ruby Maddox said March 1st. Mark Austin said, yeah, farmer school. Danny Miller, Daryl definitely making things. Oh, what's up, nephew? So those are the comments on the sideline. Justin, if you can give everybody a recap for the folks who just locked in, tell them what the conversation was about, tell them how they can get more information. And if you guys already have programs already up and running, tell people how they can contact you, how they can access that information, and they can catch everybody offline if you want to know what the cost is for that information, because information has never, ever been free. So,
Yeah. So we were talking about farming, the history of farming. We really broke down how easy it is to farm and how inexpensive it is to farm. You can farm in your backyard. You can farm if you don't have a backyard in your house. And we were talking about the different aspects of farming as it pertains to our history, how we came with seeds in our hair, how we were able to cultivate the land, how we were able to basically not only sustain this economy, but actually build this economy. America was built on our backs, literally. And so they didn't take us from nothing. They took us for our knowledge. And we were just talking about as well of how it creates a communal effect, right? And how farming links everybody together in a community together. It links families together as well. We were talking about the economics of farming, right? I mean, so people talk about Black economics and how that's rooted in farming as well. We talked about the nutritional benefits of farming as well. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff, man. And now we're talking about how we're going to create this farm school. And all the resources are right in front of you. Andrew builds raised beds like it's nothing. He builds it like it makes it look so beautiful. I can't even stand it sometimes. And Tucson
Andrew
has been
proved
in
himself out here. He proved himself in these streets.
He
So
did.
own that
He
bad
did.
boy.
He did.
animal. I'm not even getting to that. Tucson and how all his work that he's done for guarding the community, as well as Sister Anna as well, and how they're master farmers in their 3 years of farming school, but 10 years of farming in itself. I'm gonna have you guys go down the line and kind of tell people what you do briefly, and then how they can get in contact you, and if you have any programs like D said that they can take advantage of.
so we'll go from top to bottom. We'll start with Andrew since he's been really quiet.
Yeah, man. I
You talked a
appreciate
lot.
Yeah, I got Instagram, Grow Your City, that I post a lot of my work, and I show people how I break down my pallets and where I get my compost from and things like that. But I have this idea of URGE. It's been riding with me for a while, and the acronym stands for Urban Resources and Garden Economics. And I just want to create like a backyard farming network where I go in the backyard, I'm growing greens, and neighbor over the fence, he says, "Hey, can I get some greens?" And how much is it? And he tells me the oral histories of his family and how he was brought up on so like the backyard farming and connecting each other and sharing resources and what I don't got, you got. that's what I believe in. I'm trying to make it profitable in some way. The farm school idea, man, guys, hook me into that because I'm with it 100%.
You're already in. You may not know you. This was a plotted plan, bro.
Yeah, right,
Man, I
right.
need in on that because I realized that I found my passion, but I can't do it alone. I do have a family to provide for, so I have to figure it out in many ways.
Good stuff. Thank you, sir. Toussaint.
Sure enough, my name's again Toussaint. I'm currently right now. I'm working in the school system. Um, I just be around. You guys can find me on my Facebook, Talib Toussaint. If you see me on the street, just say hi. If you recognize my forehead, say hi. Um, I'll be a little more visible at the end of this school year. Um, like I said, I have kids too. I got 2 kids. I got a wife. I just got a 10-year-old. My 5-year-old that used to be on the street with me, he 10. We got a man bun. And my little baby, she 5. She going in the first kindergarten next year. So, I had to take a pause. But I'm definitely returning. They're at that age now. I'm back.
All right.
All right.
Sister Anna. Someone
Um,
just hit me in the comments and says, Daryl, ladies should always be first. So I apologize. I'm just looking down the screen. So my apologies, sis.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. This has been a great session, and my big thanks to Brother Justin for inviting me. This has just been wonderful. But I do work with the youth leaders over at Tapley Court Apartments Garden. We will be outside probably April, weather permitting. So if you would like to volunteer, you can hit me on my Instagram page. I do have one, or you can email me. And because we try to practice social distancing as much as we can, I'll put you on a rotation. We also are working with the Open Pantry Social Services. They have a garden on School and State Street. This will be our second year. They did a great job this year. Over 750 pounds of food that was grown and given out to the community right in that surrounding area. Big ups and thanks and much gratitude to the young men of Roca that built the additional beds. So again, if you want to volunteer at that site, feel free to email me and we'll get you in a rotation. And I do soil recommendations and take soil tests for people. And if you ever do a soil test and you're trying to figure out what is this they're saying, let me know and I can assist you with that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, Justin, back to you with the close.
Thank you again. 3 juggernauts in this industry, and I'm glad that you guys did this for us today. This is probably I don't want this like the most liberating thing I've heard in so long. You know what I mean? And I want everybody to replay this because there was a lot of things that were dropped that you can probably use right now in your life. And just keep on watching. The farm school will be in March 1st. You'll be able to register in March 1st. All right. I'm telling you that. That's nothing. Andrew, don't even worry. We were already a part of the plan. Thank you, D. Again, you know what I mean? I drive you crazy, but things like this make it worth it. You know what I mean? Like every week is worth it. But like to be honest, days and like this make it worth it because no plug to Our Journey. I barely plug Our Journey, but we're going to be giving away free food on the 3rd Sunday of February. And that's when we did last time, Sister Anna. Every time we give away free food, we talk about one of the big movements, which in the Pan-African movement was self-sustaining countries in the Pan-African movement. All right. People got to understand our history and we got to be able to be self-sustaining, and food sovereignty is one of those things that help you be self-sustaining as well. So on the 3rd Sunday of February, I forgot the exact date, we're going to be giving away free vegan food, and you're going to be able to learn about the farm school there too as well. You know what I mean? And we're going to have D.Moss's paper there. Another piece, like you need to big this up because my clients are taking it and being like, "Yeah, I didn't know about this." I'm plugging things because it's important, so you guys can get knowledge for free, right? And D's giving away free knowledge, and I'm gonna butcher the name. It's the Metro record, right?
The Metro record, yeah.
Right, the Metro record. He's giving away free knowledge, and it's global knowledge. We only learn about these terrible atrocities that happen here and there, but you got to learn about the positive as well. What's happening in Ghana, what's happening over here, and D's giving you that information in the Metro record. And you're going to see ads in there for people in our community that are doing good work. And this this farm school, I think, is going to be the birth. And there's been plenty things other besides the farm school that's been doing great things as well. But this farm school is going to be the birth of liberation of our people. And I think, to be honest, when we started doing free food last year, that was one of our things, is getting people to understand, in order to be free and liberated, you have to feed yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have if you can't feed yourself,
Yeah,
you're done. Food sovereignty is where it starts. So thank you again, D, for providing this platform for people to get this free information and get ready for the farm school. As always, love yourself. Next week, a new topic will be up upon us. Probably going to be on careers or herbalism, either the two. We're waiting on some responses, but herbalism or careers in the medical field where we can help our people. And thank you again for tuning in.
All right, y'all. This is Black Health. Let's talk about it. Thank you, Justin. Yo, we out of here. Peace, everybody. Thank you to all the guests. We out.
all right, thank you.